Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming along to my session about your autonomous business future, which is quite a big claim. But hopefully it'll be clear by the end of the session what we mean by that. My name is Gavin Moore. I work in Oracle in Dublin, and I'm responsible for product strategy, which is a kind of business development, but it's my job to understand all our products in Oracle, all our technology products in Oracle, and try and make sense of them all, which I know isn't always so easy. Just so I know who's kind of in the room, just to get an idea of kind of what the audience is. Who here in their organization has some Oracle software, a database or other software, apart from the Oracle guys sitting up the front here? Yeah, some people, okay. And of you people, are you technical, like database administrators, or technical people, or are you management? So management and technical. Okay, so half and half. So difficult audience then. Great. All right. So if you've ever been in front of an Oracle presentation, you'll know what this means. It just means that if I accidentally talk about something that's going to happen in the future that doesn't happen, it means you can't sue me and take me to court for lying or anything like that. Pretty much everything I'm talking about today already exists. I'm not here to talk about future things, but if I do, this is why this is here. Okay, so I'm going to talk mostly today about data, not surprisingly from an Oracle session, but what is changing about data is its importance in an organization. So once upon a time, people used to say that their IT assets were their data center and their hardware and all the infrastructure that they put in place. It was a huge investment, and there was a lot of money and time was put into that. Increasingly now with public cloud, people are actually consuming hardware as a service. They'll go to a cloud vendor and say, I need 100 CPUs of infrastructure for a period of time, and it's no longer an asset. It's no longer the thing that you invest in. Certainly it's necessary, certainly you have to have it, but it's not an investment. You don't put a whole lot of time and effort into infrastructure anymore if you're already using public cloud. So what's becoming increasingly important is the data, because the data is what is at the heart of your organization. The data is what is everything in your organization. It could be your IP, it could be everything you need to run your business, it's all your customer information, it's everything. And it's hugely valuable, not just from the point of view that if you lost it, you'd have trouble staying in business, but for many, that data is actually what generates more revenue between marketing or whatever other assets they can create from the data itself. There's lots and lots of analogies you hear these days about data is the new oil and all that kind of stuff. I don't believe really in all of that kind of thing because, first of all, it's a weird analogy. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But more importantly, data is even more important than that. Because data, the more data you create and the more data that you use well, actually it will then create even more data that then you will then take more business advantage from. So use well and use properly in a data-driven organization. Data is by a long way the most valuable asset you have in your IT estate. However, that isn't as easy as it sounds. The opportunity here is huge, and there's some stats here that you may not be able to see down the back. But the first one there says from IDC, from an analyst, it says that there's a 430 billion advantage for data-driven organizations. Now, I have no idea where these analyst companies come up with these various numbers. They're all big. But what they're saying is that if you're a real data-driven organization in that you center your IT around the data and then take advantage from there, huge amount of advantage to be made. McKinsey, one of their great statistics, they say that you're 19 times more successful or more profitable if you're a data-driven organization. And then finally, a 10% increase in data accessibility translates to $65 million of additional revenue. That's for a top Fortune 1000 company. These are all interesting numbers, and the numbers themselves don't matter, but all the analysts agree that if you become a data-driven organization and put data at the center of what you do, you'll be more successful, more profitable, more efficient. However, the problem with that is that it's a very difficult thing to do. That top statistic on the right-hand side from the Harvard Business Review say only about a third of organizations who try to change to become a data-driven organization or data-centric, only about a third of those succeed. It's difficult. It's not an easy thing to do. Security, it says there the Equifax security breach, $4 billion of what that cost. And okay, if you're a company the size of Equifax, $4 billion, you can somehow deal with that. But if you're a smaller organization, even $400,000 could be something that would be, a real problem. So just because it's $4 billion for Equifax, it scales down. So even small organizations, any form of security breach, be it brand damage or regulatory fines or anything like that, the implications from a cost point of view and the brand point of view can be huge and sometimes irrecoverable. And generally speaking, it's difficult. Most organizations find it hard to manage the data. I won't do a survey here, but I bet if I did a survey and if you were all honest, and I asked, does anybody here say that they have absolute 100% perfect access to the data in their organization in order to make the decisions they need? If everyone was honest, I'd say probably nobody would put their hand up to say, yes, what we have is perfect. I work in Oracle, and I can guarantee what we have is not perfect. Very, very difficult to get the exact data you need to make decisions, or to run a campaign, or to launch some marketing initiative, whatever it is. Very, very difficult to get the right data at the right time and exactly in the way you need it. Very, very, very difficult to do. And that's for all organizations of all sizes, not just Oracle because we're huge. In small organizations, that is also a problem. So, it's not really surprising, and we've all seen these slides about what happens in a single minute in the world these days in terms of data. It comes from absolutely everywhere. As you guys are all sitting here in the room, you have a phone in your pocket, it is generating data. Just while you're sitting here doing nothing, it's generating data. It's being stored somewhere. If you happen to be on your phone, and I'm sure nobody is on their phone, everyone's listening very carefully to me, but if you are, and you're tweeting, or you're on Facebook, or you're liking something, you're generating data. Now, a lot of this stuff is garbage. So for example, 1.1 million Tinder swipes in the last minute. Probably not a whole lot of valuable information in there for most organizations. However, 481,000 tweets have been sent. For a lot of organizations, there's gold in that information because it's people talking about your brand, or people talking about your competitor's brand, or there's something going on in that information that if you had a way to extract the intelligence out of it, you could do something. There's an opportunity there. An opportunity either to go against your competitor, or an opportunity for you to do something really amazing in terms of customer experience, or something like that. Now, most of it's garbage. So finding that tiny little piece is very, very difficult. But it's huge. Like, the amount of information that's being created from all this stuff is massive, but then there's the data that's coming from your own business as well in terms of transactions and so on. So the amount of information is absolutely massive. So no wonder it's very difficult to become a data-driven organization. And the kind of things that people need to do with this data is growing and growing and growing as well. So these are your business users. So if for those of you in the room who are from IT, so a lot of these will be familiar, where you have that annoying finance guy who keeps on asking for a report in maybe a different color or a different shape, or can you do this and that. But these are the lines of business users who need that data in order to run the business. So the finance person needs information constantly to know what's going on in the business in terms of revenue in, cost, and so on and so forth. And it's not a case that you build them a report once and then they use that forever. The way things are changing these days is that seemingly every week a different report is needed, or a different access to some information is needed, and it's constant. Marketing never seem to be happy with the amount of data they have. It always seems to be something new. As marketing innovates and marketing does really clever things to try and attract more customers, they need data in a different way, or they need other data, or they need data that simply doesn't exist in your organization and you have to acquire it in some way. But in order to acquire brand new customers, it's a data-driven business. It absolutely is. And if those guys had access to that piece of gold in those 500,000 tweets, that one thing that said that their competitor was about to do something, or their competitor was having a tough time, if marketing had access to that data, plus other data to mix with that, they can react. And they can do amazing things in a very short amount of time if they have the right information. I work in a sales organization, and again, we have all our standard reports and we have all what's going on in our sales business, but every week there's some new thing. Can I see all the customers who are fill in the blanks, whatever that is? constant need to have some other way of seeing the information to take advantage, to build some kind of new sales campaign, or whether it's just to react in a very specific way to one customer. Information is needed constantly and in a different way. And then in HR, we used to think that HR, well, we give the HR guys an application and they'll be happy. But these days, the demand for new people, the demand for the best talent, the demand to keep the talent you want, or indeed allow to leave the talent that you're happy to let leave, again, it's all about data. If you could predict in the next 6 months, here's the people who, based on trends in the past, are likely to leave your organization, you can decide, well, these guys, yes, we definitely want to keep them. These ones going to leave, fantastic. Let them go. That's a huge amount of very valuable information for any HR organization. And indeed, for recruiting new talent, the same applies. But this puts a huge amount of strain on the IT department, if that's where the data is being stored, which generally that's the case. A lot of systems are very, very old. I'm sure a lot of you have in the room, or a lot of you in the room have systems in your organization that's sitting in the corner, it works. You just don't want to touch it in case it breaks, but it's doing fine. There's a lot of those around, in addition to obviously all the more modern things that you have. Database administrators, and we have a few of them in the room, on average are managing 50 different databases. That's a huge amount of work that needs to be done in keeping databases up and running. To security, patching, compliance, all those things. It's a vast amount of work that these guys have to do. The more data that gets created, the more work for these guys, and they're overloaded. Too much to be done, can't all be done at the same time. And then obviously the security. 85% of all the exploits and all the breaches that have happened could have been prevented. 85% of all those security breaches that have happened to software where a patch had already been available that would have prevented the breach, but it hadn't been installed. And patching is hard, yeah. Patching generally means downtime. No one likes downtime, so sometimes it's easier not to do the patch. Not a good answer, but very understandable as to why that is. I see some people smiling in the room, guilty, smiling people in the room, wondering about the patch that hasn't yet been installed, hopefully not. But it's true, patching is very, very difficult. We talk to lots and lots of customers who, one of their biggest challenges is, how do we manage patching? We have to keep up to date, but we can't have the downtime. What do we do? And the problem is even made even worse, like budgets. So again, those of you in the room for IT, generally speaking, 70% of the IT budget is spent on just keeping everything working, keeping the lights on, keeping everything available, and the rest is made available for doing the new things. And these are the new things that those finance marketing guys want you to do. It's going to come to a breaking point sooner or later. 3/4 of the amount of money on data management is spent on labor. The people who have to sit there, patch the databases, tune the databases, keeping everything up and running. And downtime, risk, we don't need to go into the cost of all those. Everybody knows that any form of downtime these days is bad. So it's a big challenge. Becoming a data-driven organization, yes, everybody wants to do it, the advantages are clear, but it's a tricky thing to do. Lots and lots of things in the way, lots of things that are preventing people from doing it. So, generally speaking, like so many things these days, the answer seems to lie in some form of automation. Call it artificial intelligence and machine learning if you like, but it's automation. It's putting some intelligence back into the system so that it can do some of these things for itself. Have the software manage itself, or have other software manage the software. How do you automate some of those tasks that humans are doing today? How do you automate that so those human beings can go and do something far more valuable? What would happen if you could take some of the human beings who are constantly working on that 70% and applied those at no cost whatsoever, or no additional cost whatsoever, to doing more in the innovation space? That would be good. Budget stays the same. I'm doing more innovation because I'm doing keeping the lights on a bit at a lower cost because the software is doing it itself. That's where the world of AI and machine learning is going, and I know we've had several sessions about that today, and every IT conference you go to these days has something about artificial intelligence and machine learning in it. And there's a reason for that, is because it works. It really works. You can automate an awful lot of things that are painful with software. So, what does autonomous really mean? So, when we talk about autonomous, and the word autonomous, means something that manages itself. Something that stays running, can do things by itself that it doesn't need a human being or additional human beings to do. So for example, self-driving cars. A lot of predictions about self-driving cars, not a whole lot of them on the road today. Myself, I'm going to have to admit I'm going to be slow to get into a self-driving car. We had one of our software managers in Oracle was on stage once and he was presenting and somebody asked him about self-driving cars and he said, I've been writing software for 30 years, I know how it gets created, I will never get into a self-driving car. Which is a bit awkward given that he was standing at an Oracle conference talking about this, but that's how it is. Gartner this year, for those of you who pay attention to Gartner, I know many people do, their number one priority this year was autonomous things. Be it autonomous software, or robots, or drones, or other things that can provide automation that allows human beings to go do something else. Number one priority according to Gartner for 2019. And other things from an analyst talking about robots, talking about various other things about software that's managing itself. It is the future. For once, the analysts all agree. And many times they don't. But this form of automation, to some degree, is what is happening to the IT industry. So, not surprisingly, I'm here to talk about databases. This is what we do. And Oracle now has an autonomous database. And you can't read this quote at the back, but this is from Accenture, and it says, we are at the dawn of the intelligent autonomous age, and having a self-driving database is a natural progression. I feel that autonomous databases will become ubiquitous in the future. Now, I don't know if he said that voluntarily, or if somebody was putting him under pressure to do it. However, this is a senior architect in Accenture. They don't say things unless they mean it. This is how the future is being changed in a database world, is that all that stuff we talked about around patching and maintenance and all that kind of thing, why can't the software do it itself? Why do we need an army of human beings doing what, in many cases, is kind of a repetitive thing? It's kind of something that you don't really need human beings to have to do. Okay? And that's what we have. This is Oracle's, there we go, autonomous database. Now, what do we mean by autonomous very specifically when we talk about our database? We mean that it's self-driving. Now, what that means is that if you want to install a database in your data center, you come to Oracle, you buy one of our very, very affordable database licenses, and you bring it back to your data center, and you say, right, I need to get this database up and running. If you don't already have the machine to put it on, well, clearly you've got a lead time of a certain number of days or weeks, depending on how you source your hardware. Even if you have a machine or a virtual machine ready to go, you have to install the software, you have to configure the software, you have to do the security, you have to tune it, you have to configure it, you have to do all those things. Generally speaking, depending on the nature of the database, depending on the infrastructure, it can take 2 or 3 days to get the database ready for action. With an autonomous database, you create the database and you start using it right away. You switch it on and it works. Okay? Already installed, already ready, already configured for what you need. Anything that's not configured for what you need, it'll do it itself. It'll understand what you're trying to do and do it yourself. Do it itself. It's also self-securing, which sounds fantastic. What self-securing means is that while the database is running, if any patch is made available for the database, it will install the patch itself while the database is running. No downtime, it installs the patch and just keeps running. Now, many of you in the audience who understand patching will go, oh my God, that's awful. I will never ever allow a computer to patch itself. That's fine. You can add some kind of control to it if you don't want to just randomly patching itself all the time. But you can control how the software patches itself, but it will patch itself. And going back to the security breach situation with 85% of the breaches and all that kind of thing, your database will never be running without a patch. Ever. It will be constantly patched with all the latest security patches and all that kind of thing. So all those breaches that can happen will not happen to you, or at least not to the database at least. Okay? And then finally, self-repairing. So what self-repairing means is, as the database is running, if it sees a problem with the hardware that it happens to be running on, or running out of storage, some other problem that it believes is going to cause a problem, it will automatically fail over, figure out its own disaster recovery situation, and just go run somewhere else instead. So very much like you get with many database technologies, with failover and disaster recovery policies and all these kind of things that you have to do yourself, you don't have to worry about it. This will just do it itself. As it's running, it'll just fail over, everything will be fine. So your business is fine. Now these are all very well and good, and our marketing department did an excellent job coming up with self-driving, self-repairing, self-securing, which is all great. So what? What does that really mean? So something that's self-driving, it doesn't take days to create a database. You don't have to be constantly tuning it. You don't have to be doing all that tweaking with tuning and performance, all that kind of thing. Many people in the room, possibly it's your job to do that today. What if you could do something far more valuable? Go and build something new, design something new, instead of having to sit waiting for performance reports and so on and so forth. It saves you time, huge amounts of time. If you in the room happen to be a bank or a retailer or a telco, is somebody sitting there tuning your databases making you a better bank, telco, or retailer? Probably not. If it is, you might want to take a look at that. It doesn't. It's something that is not providing any value. It's necessary, because the thing has to run and it has to run fast, but it's not making you better at your business. Take those people and get them building that killer app that's going to make you better than your competition. Apply them to the 30% of innovation. So it saves you time. Self-securing, obviously, less risk. Nobody wants risk. Absolutely nobody wants risk, especially these days with how clever the hackers are getting. If you eliminate risk, that is a very, very good thing. Now, you can eliminate part of your risk. And self-repairing keeps up and running. You don't have to pay for all these downtimes and so on. So effectively, self-driving, self-repairing, self-securing, that's great. But effectively what it means is it saves you time, saves you money, and it reduces your risk. That's the real message here, not the marketing piece. Great, okay. So this was announced at our big Oracle conference, which happens in September every year. It was first announced in 2017 by Larry Ellison. And he stood up on stage, and this was one of these things that actually had been kept very, very quiet, even internally in Oracle. Very few people knew about this new thing that we were about to launch. And as a result, being the cynical people that we are, people said, oh, Larry Ellison got up and he invented something on the spot and in open world, which is not actually true at all. If you look back into the history of Oracle, all the way back to 9i, so I joined Oracle 14 years ago, which is kind of here somewhere. Automation has been built into the database since way, way back here. So automatic query rewrite and all these kind of technical things down here. But we've been building automation into the database for a very, very, very long time. And now 18C, in fact this is now out of date because 19C was made available just a couple of weeks ago. And as technology has evolved and has things like machine learning and AI kind of algorithms and those models that we can build now, as that technology has been made better, what these reports all did was automatically coming up with some proposal for the DBA to go and do something. I propose that you tune the database like this, or I propose that you apply this patch. With AI and machine learning now, is we can just take that one step further. The automation that we've been building in all along, we take it one step further so that the software now just applies that recommendation and fixes itself in whatever way that fix needs to be. And what is it? So an autonomous database, and there's two types of autonomous database, I'll talk about those in a second. All it is infrastructure automation, so it's running on Exadata. So Exadata is our kind of large-scale hardware platform for running an Oracle database. I won't go into how it works right now, but effectively it manages performance, availability, security, and so on. That's the hardware infrastructure. Then you take the Oracle database. So this is the exact same database that we've been running and selling for 40 years. It's the exact same code line as the database that we have, that some of you have licenses for today. But all we've done is we've added on some cloud automation and bring it all together, and that's what an autonomous database is. It is available in our cloud only, because the cloud technology is what actually provides that automation. Okay? Two different flavors of it. It's Autonomous Data Warehouse. So, just to take a step back, when you buy an Oracle license, that Oracle database that you're going to create can be an analytical database, or it can be a transactional database, or something in between. The database itself is the same software, but you configure it to be one or the other based on how it does indexing and all that other configuration. What we need to do, because this database is automated, we need to give it an idea. We need to tell it, we need to give it some identity. We need to tell it, you are a data warehouse, or you are a transactional database. So it comes in two different flavors. The software is the same, but the automation that's in there is tuned to be either analytical database or transactional database. And effectively that's it. So it comes autonomous data warehouse or transaction processing, depending on what the use case you want to apply. We have many customers already using it. Hertz is a brand I'm sure you all know. They've saved days and days and days in terms of building analytics, building data warehouses, data marts, and so on and so on. So for every time they have to create a new database, it used to take them 2 weeks. It's down to 8 minutes. So reasonably successful saving in time. Data intensity, there's a big partner of ours. They use Autonomous Database again for reporting, so they run reasonably large data warehouses, and this is a huge time saving that they've created. 10x business user adoption, meaning that their analytics now is so much better that people are actually using it and actually getting far more value out of it than they did before. They expect to save nearly $250,000 over 3 years from using this. And then finally is a company called QMP. Now QMP, they do testing of medical results. So when you, doctor in the States, when you go in for some kind of medical exam or medical test, those results go off, and at some point in time you get the results back. What was happening, because of the processing time and all these medical results, it was taking maybe a week or more for people to get the results of their test back. What these guys can do now is do it just in a few hours, purely because of the speed of the database that's running underneath and the speed of the processing that they can do to get things moving much, much more quickly. So finally, I've been giving my time warning. Oracle Autonomous Database is available in our cloud, and as such, anybody can go and try it for free. You just go to cloud.oracle.com/try it, and there you can get a free $300 trial of our software. But because you've been so good in coming on to this session, I think you've all been handed out a magic ticket that if you bring it to our booth out in the main hall, you'll get a $500 trial. Now the $500 trial, it gives you about 5,000 hours worth of running an Oracle database for free over 30 days? 60 days, even better, 60 days. So do take your ticket and go and have a chat with some of the people at our booth, and then you can try this out for free. Okay? Any questions? I noticed a load of people left. As soon as I said it was cloud only, just a mass exodus from the back of the room. Any questions about what I've covered? Okay. Thanks everybody for coming along. Thank you.